Welcome to the Friendly Moms Club podcast with Jen and Karlee. We're the new mom friends you didn't know you needed.
We are creating a safe space to bring moms together, lighten the heaviness, and find joy in the everyday moments. Together, we will share our own experiences of being new moms while navigating the topics we wish more people talked about.
Join us every Monday to hear us skip the small talk and dive right into the uncomfortable. It's a beautiful day because we have the third leg of the tripod. So
She has
trio,
a name.
actually. So if you follow us on
Tongue-tie
Instagram,
trio.
you know about the tongue-tie trio. And this is what's something that like starts the framework, the foundation of the mom village we created postpartum.
Yeah.
And Miss Shannon is the third leg of that tripod.
So
Hello.
who better to have on the show when we're talking about creating a village?
We got Shannon. Say hi, Shannon.
Oh, hello, everybody.
Shannon is like, what the hell is this microphone in front of me?
Yeah, she's thinking
I'm
it's
a
weird,
newbie.
but
She's a newbie, but little does she know we embarrass ourselves weekly every mom day.
Yeah.
So
it's just what we do. You just have to just talk.
yeah, and don't worry, I do the editing, and I will give you a good edit. I'll give you a hero edit. So if you are a reality TV fan, you know about the hero edit.
Oh.
Shannon and I bond over our love for shitty
Real Housewives.
TV. Yeah, Real Housewives.
Scandival.
Speaking of Real Housewives, last night I was trying to watch the new episode and I fell asleep on the couch and my husband left me there until he didn't even come and get me. I was so tired. I kept waking up, mad that I was uncomfortable, and it was 4 a.m. when I finally made it up to bed. And after working 2 night shifts, like all I wanted was my bed. So let's all be mad at Jeff together. He is not getting the hero edit. He's
'Cause you
getting
don't
the
get
villain
same
edit.
Sleep. Like couch
You
sleep is
don't.
not the same.
And he texted me being like, "Oh, come to bed." Dude, I was freaking sleeping. Anyways,
He's probably like, but I tried. I texted you.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the attempt.
it was
so.
a husband try.
Yeah.
So, Shannon, before we get going,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are. We'll talk about later how we met. Who do you got in your family? Tell us about your little one.
So I have a son. His name is Hunter, and he's just a little over 13 months. And I am married and have been with my husband for 9 years. And
a
we
long
live
time. That's
just
the
down
same-
the street from Karlee.
That's the same length of time
You can
Tom
almost
and
see each
Ariana were
other's-
together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a long time. Yeah, we can almost see each other. We're stone's throw away,
We
some
are.
would say.
We are.
Very, very
We are.
close by.
And I am a registered nurse like Karlee, except
You.
for I work in home care. So a lot of palliatives, not as uplifting at times as watching babies come into this
That's
world
true, but
when
you-
they're healthy babies.
Sometimes, one soul leaves, one soul enters. We are
And all
bookending
nurses
life.
are needed.
All nurses are needed. Yes.
We love nurses.
Yes.
They're the best, and you don't get paid enough or thanked enough, but they're the best.
Jen is right.
Very valid.
Yes.
Hopefully-
if I could pay you more, I would.
Hopefully our union is listening to this. So
You also are a fur mama because you have a little dog.
Oh, and I
too,
have Lily.
and
Oh,
how old
heavens.
is she? She's almost
Lily will be 8 tomorrow.
I feel like Lily's part of our story because
She
she
is.
came on walks too, and she would come at the very
would.
beginning when the
She would.
babies were all like a month old and snuggled on our baby
Yep.
carriers, and Lily would come for all our walks with us,
She
even in the
would.
snow in like middle of winter.
Yeah, she was a
with
trooper.
us.
Lily
Yeah.
has like 20 sweaters.
Oh my
so
god, her
just
little dog sweaters. are
rotate them all the time.
so
Right now she
cute.
has one that's orange and says sweater weather.
Oh
Aw,
gosh.
basic
She's
bitch.
so
Like,
fashionable.
Yeah, that's so cute.
Did you order that off Amazon at 2 a.m.?
No, winners.
Winner. Oh yeah, you love Winners and
God bless
Amazon.
Winners.
And you know what? I like that about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Shannon and I met first. So why don't you tell us about how we met, and then we'll talk about how all three of us met at Belly's.
Okay, so I had to have an emergency C-section with my son, but being the anal retentive planner I am, had bought everything to recover from a vaginal. Postpartum pads, everything for your vagina, you name it, I had.
You had a vagina care kit.
I did. It was a solid kit packed in my little black suitcase. Anyways, after about 2 weeks postpartum, realized didn't need it. It was taking up space. And so I posted it on a mom's page that I was encouraged by a friend of mine to join, and gave it away because if I didn't need it, I wanted to give it to another mom. And that other mom happened to be Karlee.
That was me.
And so Jeff and Karlee came to pick it up, and I remember meeting them for the first time, and that was on the day you went to go be induced.
Yeah.
Which is so
I
fun.
think I was either-
that day,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
I was either on my way or coming back
You
from the
had just come
hospital.
back from being induced.
Yeah, so it was October 6th.
Yep.
It was the day before Hanky was
It
born.
was. And then I remember handing it to you. I had Hunter in my arms, and I handed it to you. And that was the first time I ever met you and Jeff. And then we didn't realize this, but you live just up the street from me. And then you told me that. And yeah, and then we just kept talking.
The street, like you guys are so close.
Yeah,
to
we're
each
literally
other.
Literally.
It's
We're
just
like,
funny.
except for I drove here
500
today.
meters.
It was very cold.
But you had an appointment late.
Yeah,
Yes,
don't
that's
blame you.
okay.
Yeah.
And after, so Shannon came out and she had the stuff and she was like, you know, telling me what it's for and this and that you ended up having a C-section. And then we get in the car and like total normal talk for me, talking about vaginas, talking about healing, talking about, you know, tears and this and that. And Jeff goes, I don't think I've ever talked to a stranger about their vagina before. and I didn't think anything
But you
of
guys
it.
are both nurses.
That
too,
little does
right?
Jeff know I'm like one of the most open books
Yes.
out there.
Well, he
so
knows now. He
I will
knows now.
just talk about anything.
And me too. And it's obviously like,
And it's
I
your
didn't think
job.
it, yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't think it was weird. Like we were having like a normal conversation about
Postpartum,
it.
interpartum conversation.
And it's as if Jeff was like, yes, you've met your match. And
Yeah.
then we started chit chatting overnight.
Yep.
Because Hunter didn't like to sleep at first. Now he does. Spoiler.
Spoiler. He did a full 360,
he
180.
did 180, 180.
180.
Yeah.
Complete 180. Yep. My son for the first 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
8
yeah.
weeks of his life until we got the tongue tie done would wake me up every 45 minutes to an hour. So in the very beginning stages, especially when Karlee first had Hanky, we would rotate basically who replied overnight to the other person. And it was like every hour when I woke up, there was always a message from Karlee. And then I always sent back one to her. Then when she woke up with Henry, there was always a message.
And we're definitely both oversharers, and
100%.
we were both very much in like a very vulnerable state. So our messages weren't just like, hey, how are you? It's like, tell me about your vagina, tell me about your nipples, like tell me about your baby's poos, like let's cry over texting together. Like they were deep conversations, which I think is what we both needed at the time. Like we both needed somebody in the actual trenches together.
When you're
going, say you were a village.
Yeah,
we were.
When you're going through that period where you're so blissfully happy but so
miserable
in a very deep dark place, and you don't realize how lonely it is until you're actually going through it. And even though my husband was there for me, very supportive,
very different.
It's a very different degree of support. And it was very helpful in that early period to know I wasn't alone and that it was okay to not be okay. And to be happy that you have this beautiful miracle in front of you, but then also to be really sad and also mourning what your life was at one point.
And you were definitely going through a really hard time. I had my struggles when I was pregnant, so that in those early postpartum days, I was like actually really happy and like excited. So we kind of were like, we were both in the trenches and that we were exhausted and tired, but you were going through like a really dark and scary time. And I think it was really overwhelming for you that you weren't enjoying it. You were happy you had a baby and you loved him, but like you weren't enjoying the like day to day because you weren't getting any sleep.
No.
And he was chewing on your nipples because he had a tongue tie. Whereas I felt like I was actually, for the first time in like almost 10 months, feeling a little bit of joy. So I think that was good for us, like a good dynamic.
Complemented each other.
Yeah. And then when Hunter started sleeping better and you kind of like got your pink back, like the flamingos, that's when I really struggled. Like that's when I really like around the 6 week mark, like Henry was 6 weeks old, he wasn't sleeping as well. My husband was back to work, and that's when I really needed the support, and you were kind of on the upswing. So we kind of like complemented each other that way for the first few months. That's how our bond started.
And we met Jen shortly, a
Yeah.
couple weeks after you and I
Yeah.
started. And you and I, actually, funny story, hadn't actually, separate to when I gave you those period or postpartum
the vagina
supplies.
Yeah.
Hadn't actually seen each other in person
Yeah.
for a couple of weeks until we saw each other at Belly's when we met Jen.
And I thought they were like close
lifelong friends.
I was like,
Yeah.
these two like knew each other and got pregnant and
We
had
knew
babies together.
very deep details about each other, but
did.
had only met in person once.
It's funny. Like I sat across the room from. I can picture it now. I sat across the room from them, and they were both sitting together on the other side. And I was like, man, like I like them. Like I don't know. It's just the way you guys like talked and asked questions. And I was like, I like them.
We were like sitting on that really comfy couch.
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
remember.
the love
side
seat.
by side.
We were
Yeah,
on the
and
love
then our
seat.
babies were in front of us sleeping, and I remember Hunter napped the entire time
He did.
that I was there. And then we exchanged. Well, did Facebook
Jen picked us up.
exchange? Yeah.
We made it all the way down the stairs and out the door, and then I finally was like, we should get coffee.
She went for it.
Anyways.
And it blossomed.
It did. And we actually, what we bonded over was the fact that Jordan, Jen's little baby, had just had the tongue tie revision. And Shannon and I were both getting it like a day apart in a few weeks. And Shannon was actually the one that actually inspired me to reach out to the dentist because I knew Henry had a tongue tie. His was very visible. And then we were having issues with latching, but I was trying to convince myself that it wasn't bad enough to actually need a revision and that, I was just being dramatic and everything's actually fine. And then when she was booking in with the dentist, I asked her about the process and I finally was like, okay, like I at least need to go in for a consult. And then we ended up having it like a day apart or something.
Shout out to Dr. Body.
Yeah, Dr. Body.
yeah.
For the win.
You're the MVP.
100%.
Yeah, so if you're
We
local.
all loved him.
Yes, wonderful
Yes.
man, wonderful
Wonderful
man. With his
man.
stretches, and he was to the point, and it was quick.
And he gave us his phone number and said,
I
text
know.
me anytime.
Yeah.
We should send him a picture of all of us and be like,
What you created!
I feel like this is, I should not give out my
Look at
phone
the
numbers.
village!
yeah. Hey.
But for anyone who is ever questioning whether or not they should get the tongue tie revised, it's very quick. It's very simple. It's a laser, and they either are on the boob or on the bottle within a couple of minutes. You do
Yeah.
the stretches for a couple of weeks, and it's like you have a new baby.
Definitely.
Yeah, we got to do an episode about like all of the like health things and skin things. Like, you know, like all the things
The
that
skin
we,
things, yeah.
like, Jordan has a lot of skin things. But, you know, like all of these things that we
Yeah.
kind of struggled to figure out that we should talk about and make it more normal. Anyways, that
Definitely.
could be another episode. But we all met. We all became friends. We bonded over this tongue tie trio, as we call ourselves.
Yeah.
And we kind of started making a village from there. And so
We
that's
did.
kind of a very long introduction about what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
About what it kind of means to have a village and who's in your village and what are kind of the pros and cons and who is the most influential and stuff like
Defo.
that. So, Karlee, maybe you should go first. What do you think like a village means? What would you
Well,
say?
right now in my head, you keep saying village, and all I can think is like, what?
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
I just want to go there. So let's get that out of my system.
Okay.
Okay, village. So I feel like you have different villages for different like phases of life and different things in life. So like you'll have like your work wives and like your work village and, you know, people you went to school with. But for me, the time that I've like needed a village the most, going through nursing school and now having a baby. And for me, village does not just mean like blood family and people that you see regularly. It can be people that you talk to online, strangers you meet on the internet. It can be people you meet postpartum and then form this like immediate bond with, a la the tongue tie trio. And I think sometimes you create a village going through hard times and you fill it with the people that you need in your life in that moment. And I think it's important to acknowledge that like people you become friends with postpartum or like even mom friend and like mom villages, they don't have to be people you're going to be friends with forever. These suckers are stuck with me, but
Cheers.
you can, cheers to that. You can make friends and like have people be part of your village and lean on each other when you go through a hard time. And that doesn't mean you're going to be, you know, ending up in a retirement home together. Maybe it does, but you don't need to have this like pressure that once a village, always a village. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not saying make friends and then ditch them when you don't need them, but you don't need to have this pressure that they need to be like a lifelong friend and become a family member. Like often they will. But I think to me, sometimes a village is just the people you meet when you need them and they need you and you support each other and there's like give and take and sometimes you're both drowning together. Sometimes one's the lifeguard and one's the drownee and you swap back and forth.
Yeah. I think it's important to note that I think for your village, it matters the quality of people that you have, not in
Defo.
quantity. Like you could have a
Defo.
huge village, but really they're all pretty useless, or like
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like actually a great supportive village. Whereas you could have a few people in your life that make the biggest difference, and that's your village. So we're not talking about you need to go out and make 10 or 20 people in your village for your postpartum, but I think you should choose wisely.
Definitely.
Like who's actually going to show up for you, because surprise, not everyone will.
Not everyone will.
You're going to have a baby, and people that you thought would show up for you won't. And then people that you didn't expect to come into your life will all of a sudden be your like greatest supporters and be your biggest influence during this time, right?
Definitely.
It's kind of interesting to see who shows up and how during this time period.
Agreed. Shannon, what would you add? What does village mean to you?
I would say it was in that moment having two people who like you could share the innermost, deepest, darkest thoughts that you had with each other and knowing that no judgment would ever be given.
Definitely.
She's going to cry, guys.
Yeah. I don't need tissues at this point.
Okay.
But it's more so knowing that, like, you know, early on, I should say I suffered a miscarriage before I got pregnant with my son. And so when I got pregnant with Hunter, I spent the entire pregnancy being afraid that Hunter was going to die and that I wasn't going to be able to have a successful pregnancy.
A very legitimate fear.
And I felt really guilty after I had my miscarriage because I thought it was my fault, even though it was nothing, no fault of mine. It was just not a viable pregnancy and it was an early on miscarriage. But I remember when Hunter was born, I remember thinking I should be happy. This is all I've ever wanted and all I prayed for every day, and then feeling bad that I wasn't happy and that I was depressed. And then you find people who, when you surround yourselves, I'm not looking at you guys for a reason.
She's hiding.
When you surround yourself with people who understand you and understand what you're going through and never pass judgment, and who tell you that your feelings are valid. You know, I notice we repeat ourselves often in our group chat that the three of us have with each other, but we say it so often that our feelings are valid, that what we're feeling is okay, because in that moment, when all you want to do is be happy, but you're so sleep deprived that you can't think of the next day. And, you know, my husband went to work and then I was alone with my son and I'm like, well, what do I do now? I'm trying to keep this tiny human alive who I love, but I'm in such a deep, dark place. And then every day we would message each other, and it was just having that support and knowing, hey, you can tell me that today is really crap. And it's okay that today is crap, because the next day is a new day. And if that day's crap, that's fine. Tell me. And it was the fact that there was never any judgment. It was okay to not be okay. And that I could always rely on you guys, no matter what time of day it was, to say, you know, this is going on with Hunter and I'm not okay. And then you guys would check on me more often. And it was just really reassuring to know that I wasn't alone in my struggles. And that even though I was surrounded by, say, a village of my family and my husband, this was a different type of support, because it was people who were going through the exact same thing I was. Sure, we were all experiencing different emotions and we're at different phases of our postpartum journey, but we were all at one point or another went through the same thing as the other. And it was really helpful to just know that you aren't alone.
100%. Even if we weren't feeling your feelings in that moment, we felt either similar ones or had experienced those exact ones. Yeah. And I think we're all born in the 80s, 90s. We're millennials. We've all grown up kind of just having our feelings invalidated by society. We've been told that, like, oh, you can't be upset about this because you have to be grateful. And, you know, that's kind of how we all grew up. That's why all millennials have anxiety and depression, because we've been told growing up from society, from family members, from friends, that a lot of our feelings aren't valid or that we have to be grateful. So I imagine you had that huge struggle postpartum that, well, how can I be sad about this? I have a baby. I'm supposed to be happy. But you were having a shit time.
And to know that it's okay, like, you can be grateful and be depressed at the same time.
You can have two emotions.
You can be grateful and you can be in a really deep, dark place, and it helps to have that village to help pull you out of it. It also helped that my son obviously became a much better sleeper after he got his tongue tie done.
Yeah, I think you would have figured it out.
Yeah, you're not giving yourself enough credit.
Yeah, I would have gone there eventually. But.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting that, like, different people in your village also play a different role, like how you're saying too, because, like, when your husband goes back to work, are you gonna message him all day every day about how crappy you're feeling? Like,
no, he saw it on my face when he came home.
But, like, sometimes they can't, depending on what their job is.
Yeah,
they can't actually support you during the day. So who's going to be your village during the day when your husband is at work or your partner's at work? Or
and 2 a.m.
You might not have family that lives nearby. So sure, you could talk to them, and that is helpful.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to get out of the house. Like, we would go for walks every week, and that was, like, my saving grace was getting out of the house and being able to go. And we'd walk for, like, an hour, 2 hours. We'd go get coffee, like... And we would just talk nonstop. Like, the three of us know how to talk. But we would talk nonstop for just hours about all things, like how we were feeling, baby, postpartum, like things we didn't know, questions like, I'm feeling like this. Have you guys ever felt like that? And, like, it's just so interesting to me about the different people in your village and how they serve different purposes, I guess.
Definitely.
I think the Bellies class that on November 2nd was the first time.
I love how you know the date.
November 6th, one of those. It was the very first time that I'd actually gotten out of the house. One of the first times I'd gotten out of the house with Hunter, besides me just sitting on the couch cuddling him. It was actually like getting myself out and stuff. And there were times where we would schedule a walk and I'd be like, oh, it's so much easier to just stay home. But I always got out, and it forced me to, you know, be out. And I always felt better afterwards. But it's kind of that point of getting there, right?
But you need that, like,
You need that push.
Yeah, you do.
And knowing you're going to be greeted with like non-judgmental faces, familiar faces, you're going to get some fresh air. And
no one cared if you're late or if you had to do a diaper change
No.
in the back of your car on the way.
I was always late.
Like,
Jen was always early.
Yeah.
And then Shannon and I alternated about who was late.
Yeah.
It was great.
I mean, you wrangled a dog too. And like,
Yeah.
you know, but I think this goes into kind of our next question of like, who would you say is the biggest influence in your village? And I think we would all agree that it's been like, you can't discount your partner because
No,
they
it's
are
different.
so important,
Yeah.
but it's just different. And I think the most influential, like really the game changer was meeting each other.
Each other.
I would say that, you know, we all three have very supportive spouses, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that like as much support as they offered, I also think that sometimes, at least for me, I wouldn't necessarily show everything to him. Like I remember talking to him about this a couple weeks ago, about how there was one night in particular when I was stopping breastfeeding and I was trying to switch Hunter over to a bottle, and this was before the tongue tie. And Hunter wouldn't take the bottle because he wasn't familiar with that type of nipple. And I went and had to give my son to my husband and take a step away because I was starting to cry and have almost like a panic attack.
Yeah.
And in that moment, my biggest regret is not asking Derek to take the next day off of work, which he had offered to do all the time, but I never took him up on it. And I talked to him about that, and he was like, well, why didn't you just tell me? And I think there's almost this, I don't know, the societal norm that as moms, we're supposed to handle it all, but we don't have to handle it all. And my husband is very supportive, and I should have just in that moment told him what I needed from him, because as wives, we all know, got to make it black and white. Got to tell him exactly what you
Read
need.
between the
Direct.
lines.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that was my biggest regret. But I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better father for my son and partner during this journey. But I think that, you know, like we've talked about, it's just a different degree of support when you meet women who are going through the same thing as you, and who all, I think what has also helped us, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we all, prior to even getting pregnant and meeting each other, all had our own mental health struggles.
Definitely, yeah.
And all understand what that's like and how we've coped with it or how we haven't coped with it and what we've needed and different support we've needed. And I think that allows us to be more raw and real with each other. And I think that meeting you two saved me.
And it's
Right back at you.
yeah, I think about this a lot as I'm sitting here super pregnant now, and I'm like, what do I do? My next, like, I have to find a new village, because I do think it's important to find people, but I don't want to replace anyone. Like, it's like this whole big thing about I think we lucked out so much finding each other, and I just wish everyone, like anyone listening to this, like, I just hope you find this village, like you find these people that can be there for you, like we've been there for each other, because it really is a game changer.
Yeah.
And there's things that your partner is never going to understand. You are the one that had that baby inside of you that lived in fear for the whole 9 or 10 months. Like, there's just things that no one else is going to understand. And I have a lot of friends that had kids already, and they are super helpful. Like, they were definitely part of my village, but in a different way, because they had already gotten to the other side, and they were going through their new struggles, right? Every age has their own struggles. And so they're not living in the same struggle that you are at the time.
They're in a different
So they
trench.
were like, helpful village, but not the same. And it's quite funny because I see this meme. I already talked about it in one episode, but I'll talk about it again. That said, like, I apologize to all the friends who, like, I didn't really show up for before when you had kids. Like, I didn't realize
who had
what you
babies
truly
before.
needed when you had that. Because it's true, I didn't show up in the way that I probably could have and should have. And
But you
now,
didn't know any better.
but now you know, right? So it's just, there's different people that are going to be part of your village. But I think finding some people that are going through the same things, doesn't have to be the exact same age, but close by.
Close enough, yeah. In the same ditch, not the ditch across the street.
Yeah. And we
Although Shannon's in the ditch across the street, but we're...
Yeah.
And we have a whole episode. Episode 1 is actually about how to make mom friends. So go and listen to that. We'll just touch on it here briefly about, like, how do you find this village? And we kind of said a few things, like online mom groups. Like, you guys met off of a Facebook group that was about moms. Karlee met another group of women off the Facebook group.
I think it was
the fertility group.
Yeah.
And now you've met one of them in person, which is kind of funny. Like, someone that you were talking to through this group also turned out to be in person, which was fun.
And we met
At Belly's.
Bellies. Yeah.
Belly's was another place that we met a lot of
I don't know if
moms.
we've ever mentioned Belly's before, but and then like the library.
Library classes.
That's how we met. Yeah.
Swimming lessons. Oh, I got hiccups.
And I guess I would also say that you have to put yourself out there. Again, we talked about this in the first episode, but if you go to a library class, like look at other mums, and so afterwards they let you play at the end, and like you talk to other moms, and we were like, hey, we're gonna go for a walk, does anyone want to come? Like, I would encourage you to always be welcoming and looking for other moms or partners, anyone that's there, and just saying like, hey, we're gonna go for coffee, does anyone want to join? Because people, like, you need that connection.
Definitely.
And so I'd urge you that even if you already have some people in your village, like, share the love.
Definitely.
Invite some other people out. Like, they might be really struggling and needing someone. And we ended up meeting so many amazing people, like so many moms. We have so many birthday parties we just went to because we met so many moms.
Oh, there was like 8 in a row.
Every weekend.
Every weekend.
was
Derek's like,
birthday
I don't know what we do with our weekends now that all the babies have been born.
Yeah.
Actually, what are we going to do?
And then Stroller Fitness, we met some other moms at Stroller
Stroller
Fitness. Like,
Fitness.
same thing. After class, we would hang out and have lunch. And we just invited
our
some other moms.
lunches.
Anyone want to come?
Our Thursday lunches.
We're going
I
to
know, I
come do
miss
lunch.
them.
Anyone want to come over? And so some said yes, or we go for a walk after, right? And so it was just finding ways to reach out.
And I think the reason that all three of us met other people and actually bonded with them is because we put ourselves out there.
Yes.
Like Shannon and I put ourselves out there, actually sending like deep, dark messages. You put yourself out there by asking for our phone numbers. We all put ourselves out there by like actually trying to connect with people in person at the library, at swimming lessons, at Stroller Fitness. Like, we would see the same people over and over, but we would actually, you know, get to know them, ask about their kid, and actually like, what do they do for work? Like, not just like, oh, how old's your kid? Are they walking? Like, we actually...
Oh, yeah. We also found the group, Mama's Time Out, that Kelsey ran.
Oh, yes.
And I think it's important to share, too, because it was the first time someone had really emphasized the fact that moms should also focus on us. Like, we shouldn't get together with other moms and only talk about our babies. And that was the first time someone had really kind of, like, told me, like, your village doesn't have to be just about how to support your baby. It's also you and your needs.
Yourself.
And like, we went to a yoga class, just the three of us once, and
that
like
was fun.
like we did something without our babies, which was the weirdest thing because we had spent how many hours with each other with our babies, but doing something without it was kind of cool. Like, now we've done a few things, but
That was the very first time I left Hunter alone.
Aww.
By my, like, was that brunch at Town Hall.
Oh, yes,
Right?
yeah. That
I
was
remember
December.
that. Yeah.
but it was a really good reminder that we all needed of like, hey, we should focus on us, and we should talk about us sometimes too. We shouldn't just talk about our babies.
Definitely.
Which is an easy thing to do.
They're cute, but screw them. No, I'm kidding.
Well, you met her too. So
Kelsey from Mama's Time Out actually was the one that taught us about the phrase martyrdom, which is like the idea that like we women and moms sacrifice their own needs for their babies, and that like their babies and families are like the number one priority, and we're like being a martyr for our family. Like, we are sacrificing our own We'll find a better description. But
well, Kelsey's going to be on here one day.
oh
and
yes, we'll
just
talk
go
about
over it then.
that. Yeah, Kelsey, if you're listening,
We have so many good people in our village
we are so
that have
blessed.
wanted to come on the podcast. So it's actually really fun to like have people that were supported us, like Kelsey and like
and Shannon.
But like there's so
Yeah.
many more people. Like, it's
Shannon's been our
Belly,
number
so
one
we had
supporter.
Samantha already on here. We met Mel, which was our mom friend that we met, and she came on to talk about IVF. Like, it's really cool that we have so many people that we've met now since having babies that all are going to be on here.
Definitely.
Which is really
Actually,
fun.
last night Shannon and I were at swimming lessons, and we were changing the babies, and she asked, "Oh, tomorrow's Friday. Are you guys filming?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh, maybe I'll stop by." And I was like, "Oh, come record an episode with us," because we've actually been talking about having her on here for like literally since the conception of this. And I don't know, there's just life. And now that we're all back to work, we were talking about like, well, how are we going to do this? We'll do it in an evening maybe. And then we didn't give her a choice. And here she is.
Did you guys have your naked showers together?
No, because Derek was there. I think that.
know.
Oh, funny
Derek
story
and I
though.
actually had our naked showers.
I forgot to lock the bathroom when we went in there to change Hunter, and Derek was literally taking his swimsuit off in the shower, and a lady opened it, and she was this close to getting a peep show.
Oh,
and
how
Derek's
nice.
like, oh, he's like, you didn't lock the door, and I was like, I don't know, did she see anything? And
Yeah.
he's like, no, but she probably would have walked in here if she had.
Want to come and
my
join
husband
you.
and ladies and gentlemen.
That's way more fun than my bathroom story. I went to go into a change room and there was a staff member in front of me, like peeking his head in. And it was like one of the nice big ones I could bring the stroller in. And I was like, oh, is that available? And he looks at me. He's like, do not go in there. He's like, I really need to clean this. And I was like, okay.
Was there a poop incident?
I'm assuming there was like poop everywhere. And I was like, I see enough poop at work. I'm not even going to peek. So I just went in
That's
one of the
fair.
stupid tiny ones. We digress after we always
Yes.
somehow come back to poop.
Yeah.
We talked about what does a village mean? What is the most like influential part of your village? I want to say the people that will show up for you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care what you look like. They don't care what your house looks like. They don't care if you're going to cry and be sad the whole time. They don't care like what kind of mood you're in. They're the people that literally will drop everything to care for your child, to care for you, bring you stuff. And essentially,
Wipes when your daughter has a blow up
Exactly,
in their car,
exactly.
and they won't
I'm-
judge you.
You know, that's a good photo.
I am just describing these two ladies. Both of them have brought me food. They know my love language. Coffees. Shannon is the receiver of the booby peep shows at the door. Jen's brought me croissants, and I just like people that are just going to show up for you in like literally your worst hour. Yeah, it's great. You need those people.
I think it's sad because sometimes you expect people to show up,
Yeah.
and then
They
they
don't.
don't, and that it hurts, right? Like you just
And I think it's
sucks.
sometimes that they don't get it. They don't realize how much you need that. They don't realize how much like a coffee and a muffin will turn your day around. And like sometimes you don't need somebody.
all of us as food is our. We're all like, yes, it
Yes,
really
yes,
would.
yes.
A coffee, a nice coffee,
Yes,
like food.
muffin, mini eggs.
You showed up with those scones on my door that one day. Oh, that
I
was
know.
clutch.
Clutch.
Do you guys have any examples of like kind of when you thought someone would show up and they didn't, they let you down? Like any negative experiences so far? Anyone have any examples?
I don't think so because as soon as I met you guys, it didn't really matter anymore.
That's a good way to
Not
put it.
to sound
yeah.
corny, but I knew that no matter what, you would always show up. And actually, one of my fondest memories ever was when we started doing stroller fitness at the very beginning. And I think I had only met Nanad once.
Mm-hmm.
And he showed up after stroller fitness with Starbucks for Karlee and I.
Oh yeah,
And I thought, these are my people.
yeah.
Definitely.
Because
Coffee and food is
we
our love language.
I had only met him once, and the fact that he was so kind to bring us Starbucks, and I gotta say that just meant a lot to me. And I would say, yeah, from the moment I started talking to you guys, I never had to worry, right? And that's not like you don't get the support at home, wonderful support at home, but once I met you guys, it didn't matter if anybody else was there for me, that or type thing, because I had you guys.
That's a good way to put it.
That is a very good way to put it. I didn't think of it in that way, but I like that.
I definitely would be a shell of a human if I didn't have you guys in my village. I always thought that like, oh, my parents live half an hour away. That's super close. But like when you have a baby and you're not sleeping, like that's actually not that close. And I know, Shannon, your mom lives like actually out of town, like a ferry ride away. But sometimes like 30 minutes might as well be a ferry ride away. Like it feels very far.
I think it's important just to note that, yeah, some people, their family doesn't actually live here. And so you can't just expect that your family is going to be that number one, that constant. Like my parents go away, and so we can't rely on them for childcare to always be
Regularly,
there
yeah.
to babysit. Like they were just gone for almost a month, and which is great. Like they're retired. I want them to enjoy their retirement. So I can lean on them while they're here, and they're super helpful, but then they're not always going to be here, right?
Exactly.
And like you have to find
people who are going to be there summers, holidays, when like my parents are the same. They go away for about 6 months of the year.
Yeah.
So like during that time, you have to like make a village of people who, you know, they have young kids, so they can't travel. So you got to find the people who can't afford to travel.
Yeah.
That's how you find
Same
your village.
economic
Yeah.
status as you. We're gonna have campouts in our backyard, and we're gonna
Hey,
do all
I
this
would
fun
love
stuff.
that.
Okay, so then on the flip side, have you had any really good examples? Like, is there any really good story? I mean, you talked about bringing Starbucks. Like, anything you can think of that you're like, man, like this is why having a village is important.
The very first thing that we did last year at your house on December 27th.
I don't know why you remember all these
I do.
dates, but like, okay.
I do that
When we
too.
had the husbands with the babies, all of our babies had just, or actually Henry was 2.5, almost
Yeah,
3
almost
months,
3,
and
yeah.
Jordan and Hunter were 3 months. And funny story, if it's not already been mentioned on the podcast, my husband used to play baseball with Karlee's husband, Jeff.
Yeah.
So we found that out when I gave Karlee and Jen Christmas cards, and our Christmas card was on the fridge, and Jeff was like, is that Derek Hansfall? And the rest is history.
The rest is history. We know each other. And
small world.
our mother-in-laws worked at the same hospital
They
as well, which
they
is
did.
so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say it was like when you start to realize, like when you get the husbands together and you realize that, you know, we're friends, but then kind of they're also
Yeah, they
in
get
a group
along.
setting. They get along and our babies get along. And it's just kind of like those group settings that we got into where our village kind of expanded to include our spouses, because I know Derek actually enjoys coming and meeting up with
Definitely.
Nanette and Jeff and stuff. And I would say just those instances, like after Bellies and when we started going on our walks, the very first time we went to Fort Langley, we have this photo of our baby strapped to our chest and Hunter's losing it because he's hungry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a little walk.
I would say those walks, and then, you know, and then there was the one where we actually met up with Kelsey on the
Oh yeah, in
ran
Osprey
into
Village.
her on Osprey Village, and
That was so fun.
then their village started slowly expanding.
Yeah.
And
I think you made a point there that like when we start interacting with each other in like other ways, like we've met each other's parents and in-laws, and this is like a true example where your friends actually become your family. Some would say your family. So
I've never heard anyone
Framley?
say Framley before.
I think it's like chuggy and like not cool anymore, but
my mom actually looked forward to meeting both of you.
Yeah.
Because she was so grateful to you, because I stopped crying on the phone to her every day when I met you guys. Not that she doesn't love, you know, talking to her daughter
Of
every
course.
day, but she was really worried about me.
Yeah,
And the
of
tears
course.
became less and less, and the panic attacks became less and less when I started talking to you guys. So when she came out in April, out to my birthday dinner that you guys so lovingly organized, she was very excited to meet you.
well, we were very excited to meet her. And I think it's great that like we've all met each other's families. We're all, you know, soon enough our parents are going to be vacationing together.
Yeah.
They're just going to leave us.
Actually, the very first time I met your parents, Jen, I was in their basement suite, and I was feeding Hunter a bottle, or trying to, because he was so distracted.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Now, which baby is this again? Is
Yeah.
this the one that sleeps through the night?" And I said, "Yes."
Yes, it is.
I talk
That's
about
funny.
you guys just a
Yeah.
little bit. I think one of the like big standout points for me, and kind of when I was like, this is super, like this is good. I mean, there's been lots, but the one where we were talking about like, I can't remember how it came up. I think just like babies crying and not sleeping, and like what do you do when you're getting so overwhelmed? And we started talking about like they make so much noise when they sleep, and you guys were like,
yes.
"Oh, I put headphones in. Oh, I wear earplugs. Oh, I do
Earplugs.
this.
Yeah,
I moved her to the other side of the room."
Earplugs.
And we all did the different variations, but of the exact same thing. And I was like, I'm not alone in this. And that feeling of just like
Solidarity.
I feel like it immediately just bonded us when we were like, we all do this. Like we kind of all were like, I don't want to say that we do.
Exactly.
Like,
I
we all felt weird about it.
I was
right?
afraid to open up that I wear earplugs next to my son for fear of judgment. And as soon as I found out that you guys all did variations of that, because I mean, I had to sleep next to my son. He wouldn't sleep in his bassinet, so I had to sleep next to him on an air mattress by his crib for 4.5 months, and he got louder and louder.
They're so noisy.
And
so noisy.
you know, and during his colicky gassy phases, he would throw his legs up in the air and then throw them down on the
dolphin kicks.
mattress,
I love
and
those.
then pass gas and then cry. And that was my life for 8 weeks. But I remember even after those 8 weeks, after the tongue tie, when he started sleeping, I had to wear earplugs because he would wake me up with the rustling, and I'm a very light sleeper. So yeah.
But there was no shame. We were all
no
like,
shame.
we all struggle with this.
We all
like,
did it. Yeah.
So
we all
that to
needed
me
it
was
for
just that-
survival.
I just had this like, I felt like home. Like I felt like it was such a safe place in that moment. It really just, I don't know. There was something about that we bonded that I felt like this is my safe
Brought
place
us together.
now.
Yeah.
And I've had some dark thoughts.
Yeah.
But
We've
when
all
I
had a couple.
yeah, well, we've all had some
Well,
dark
handful.
thoughts. But when my first instinct, I mean, not first, but I mean, there's one instance that I wanted to tell you guys, and I hadn't even told Nanad. And I was like, that says something. When I was like ready to tell you guys, and I needed to get it out. And it's not that I didn't want to tell Nanad, and I did tell him, but I felt
We're more important.
Could be wrong, but weren't we the first person that people that you told you were pregnant?
Yeah. Because like, but there's
Yeah.
just, you know, when you're like, when those people are at the front of your mind, and you're just like, I can say this awful thing I've been thinking, and I'm not worried about fear of judgment or being shamed
Never.
or anything like that. And I want to tell them just as much as I want to tell my husband, or like, I'm just as comfortable to tell that. Like, there's just something.
If you need ideas on how to do this, we have an episode. I can't remember the number. I want to say it's 11-ish on how to be a good mom friend. And we talk about validating mom's experiences. So if you want some tips about what Jen's talking about, because I think that even if you haven't experienced an emotion or if you've never been through the same situation, just validating that what they're going through like is hard, and it is okay to be sad, and you can have two emotions where you're sad and upset or depressed or anxious and also grateful. And I think that like just the way that society expects moms to kind of have it all together and always be happy, like that's not reality. Like you need people who are going to, one, be truthful and honest with you when you need advice, like actually give you the good advice, and also validate that like what you're experiencing is freaking hard, and it is okay to cry, and it is okay to like not be happy, and that doesn't mean you don't love your child or love your husband if they piss you off. And
there's some big emotions that can happen postpartum, so having a safe place to share those emotions, like you have to get them out. So I think that's just another reason why finding your village and finding those people within your village that are kind of those go-tos are so important.
So even if you want your partner to like be your number one, if they have not been through the like pregnancy and birthing and attempting breastfeeding or successfully breastfeeding experience, like they're not gonna get it. They can try to be the most supportive people in the world, but unless they've actually been through that, then they don't get it.
Well, they can also cope with emotions and stuff differently.
Oh gosh, yes.
Like Derek and I are two very different people when it comes to how we deal with stress and decisions
arguments
and stuff in our lives. And so as supportive as he was, there was a layer to my postpartum experience that I think as much as he tried to understand, he didn't physically go through it.
Exactly.
And then having to also recover from the C-section when all I had planned for was a vaginal, and dealing with that pain and all of the layers and trauma and stuff that comes through with it. Because, you know,
and the grief, like
and the grief,
grief, and then the hormones postpartum.
Oh, the hormones.
Yeah, there's those. Like those are just next level. Apparently, you got big hormones.
Apparently. If you didn't know that, guys,
yeah,
it's gonna happen.
spoiler. Yeah,
no,
you go through
it's,
menopause in minutes. Yeah,
it's just an important part of your journey. So
definitely.
Any last thoughts before we wrap up here? We don't have a Mom Day mattress.
We
today.
don't know, but we do have a cat
We've
that
been
is
too busy.
desperate for attention. So we're gonna go practice what we preach, and we're gonna go have lunch together. And hey, kitty cat, get out of here. We're gonna go have lunch together. We're gonna have some yummy food. We're gonna sit and we're gonna hang out and talk, and you know, maybe there'll be more tears, but that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go hang out with our mom village. And actually, I just realized that we don't have our babies with us, and we haven't had a lunch, just the three of us without babies, I think ever.
Yeah, no, because we've been in bigger group settings when Kelsey
Should we get
organized
drunk?
those brunches.
Obviously not Jen, but
I mean, I have to drive to get my hair cut,
so.
and pick my
So I'm
son
gonna
up from
pick my
daycare,
child
and I'm pretty
up.
sure that's an MCFT policy.
Yeah,
if you
that's
show up
probably
drunk, the
frowned
calls
upon.
I'm pretty sure that was like on our like
It's
that
on
is-
the policy.
It is, yeah. Oh man. Okay, fine. We'll get drunk another day.
Well, thanks for listening, and thank you, Shannon, for being
oh my
on
goodness.
the episode.
I went to go
today.
wave there. Bye, guys.
And for sharing and for being open and vulnerable. You can see why we like her, because she is amazing and supportive.
Stuck with me.
And we're all stuck together. So yeah, go find yourself a mom friend who likes to see you naked. Yeah, Shannon's like, yep,
That's
been
me.
there. That's me.
On that note, happy Mom Day.
Happy Mom
Happy
Day.
Mom Day.
Next week.
Bye.